The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of Talk Radio AM 640.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. March. Roger. Backup clock is started.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
I'm the Spaceman. This is ABFS. I'd like to welcome you in if you're right now listening to the radio station, Talk Radio AM 640, or if you're at work right now, maybe listening via the Radio Player Canada app, or picking it up live, free also on Apple Music. I welcome you in also. Or maybe you're what some call sitting in the best seat in the house, sitting in front of your Mac, your PC, logged on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming there. I welcome you in. As a matter of fact, wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. Detect sort of a lull in the Illuminati-controlled mass media this past week. Well, it's been sort of a downturn, really, because, well, we're in between Sabbats. The next one is Soen. Oh, you know that one is Halloween. It's coming right up. Things could get very, very heated in the Middle East, I'm thinking. But one of the stories that has been filling the gap all of this week is Catalonia. Why the coverage of the Catalonians' separation or wanting to separate from Spain? What's that all about in the Illuminati-controlled mass media, you might ask? Why is this a supposed global story? Well, there is a reason. And the reason is the elites, the Illuminati, merely want you to focus your mind on an area of the world that they hold very close and very dear to their hearts in their religion of Luciferianism. Here's your proof. The elites believe there are, in fact, Atlantis ruins in Europe. Where? The proof of this is in what's called the megalithic masonry of Cyclopean colonies. And where of all places? Well, that's the place that's been placed in the forefront of your mind. Right now, tonight. Has been for a while. Catalonia in Spain. By the way, the richest region of them all in Spain. As you know, Spain is in deep, deep debt. Catalonia, the most well-off, want to pull away. Borders also comes up. Yes, that's on the very top. But underneath, the deeper meaning. That's Atlantis. The megalithic Cyclopean stone walls that once surrounded and protected the ancient city of Tarraco, now modern-day Tarragona, in northeast Spain, in the Catalonia region. Because the Catalonians, you see, who are the elites again, I tell you, and the Basque region that spills over into France, believe that they are descendants from the Atlanteans. That mysterious continent that sank into the ocean who knows how long ago. Mythical. And of course, it's all very difficult to interpret or understand. In a word, it's very mysterious. The classical historians, though, tell us that these walls in Tarragona, Catalonia, were built by a mysterious race of one-eyed giants called the Cyclops, made a lot of in Greek mythology, of course. This undermines the mainstream of the city's origins offered by modern scholars who claim Tarraco was founded by the Romans. But Tarraco's walls were built by a dying race of humans, the elite believe, the Illuminati believe, called the Cyclops. And their bizarre architecture formed the foundations for a later Roman settlement. Researchers say Tarraco, or Tarragano, as it's called today in Catalonia, Spain, was founded by the Romans a few thousand years ago, but this explanation is directly contradicted by the megalithic prehistoric wall that once surrounded the protected ancient city of Tarraco. Again, Tarragano, today. Tarragano, the ancient name Tarraco, is the oldest Roman settlement in the Iberian Peninsula, founded during the Second Punic War by Scipio Calvus. Cyclopean Masonry. It's a type of stonework built with massive boulders, roughly fitted together with minimal clearance between adjacent stones, and no use of mortar whatsoever, nothing to pack in between them. The Cyclops were supposedly giants. Now, I can tell you now, the Illuminati and their religion, they believe that they were spiritual giants and knowledgeable giants. Not giants to be able to lift stones. They knew the technology on how to do it. That's how the pyramids were built. Later on, in Egypt, after Atlantis, because this information that was packed away and stored was given to the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians. Now, the Illuminati believed these spiritual gods, these Cyclops, preferred solitude over battle. They did have one eye, and it was the pineal gland. The pineal gland is also known as the awakened third eye in the occult, where you can communicate with spirits in the underworld. The word Cyclops itself comes from the belief of classical Greeks that only the mythical Cyclops had the strength enough to move these enormous boulders to build these walls around the ancient Tarraco. Tarragano today, or Ghana, in northeast Spain and Catalonia, as you know, that city today. Megalithic stone passages, too, can be found along Tarragana's wall, modern day, in Catalonia. They're still standing. They seem futuristic, made of massive cyclopean blocks. These passages also seem to have provided an access into and out of the colony when they were serving their purpose. But the Illuminati believe the stone passages also have some type of, well, mystical purpose, because sometimes things have two meanings, the obvious and the hidden, deeper one. Like the megalithic dolmens I'm speaking about, passage graves, and henges found across Great Britain and other parts of the world, even in North America, with the burial mounds of the Aboriginals. Evidence for this can be found in these ancient swastika mosaics preserved at Tarragana's Archaeology Museum. The swastika is the chief symbol, of course, of Hinduism, and it signifies the third eye as one of its meanings. It's a sun worshipper's symbol. The swastika appears in museums worldwide, too, a fact that convinced many Victorian scholars that the swastika was actually linked to the lost continent of Atlantis originally, which they believe was the home to a race of giants, the Cyclops I've just been talking about, with an awakened third eye. Spiritual giants is what they mean here. Not physically. I'm talking in the spirit world. These scholars were familiar with the age-old occult tradition that ties Atlantis to the Golden Age. Well, we know that Golden Age ended. But I'm just getting started. It's a Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640 more. Right after this break. And you've already sent, I really appreciate it. They start coming in, as I say, every week. before the show even starts. Some trying to guess what the topic's going to be about. Some people giving me information. It's just a constant stream, and I thank you so much for it. I really appreciate the support and the critiques that you also convey. And thanks for it all. So, as I said, an awakened third eye in the time of the Atlanteans. That's why Atlantis was supposedly so, well, ahead of its time, so incredibly knowledgeable, because of the knowledge that they had. Old, ancient occult tradition that ties Atlantis to the Golden Age, which is Luciferianism, sun worship. This tradition says that when the Golden Age ended in Atlantis, the Atlanteans lost their stature, their third eye power also, because, well, gradual decline in effectiveness or due to underuse or even neglect. And it became concealed by the flesh alone. It also left their descendants, well, the humans that came after, modern humans, unable to fully recognize that inner divinity that we're all supposedly supposed to have with this pineal gland, the third eye. This is what the elite believe, the ones that are calling the shots in our world today, and they want to bring back that golden age. Though through gradual decline in effectiveness due to underuse and neglect, as I say, with this pineal gland, the elites still believe that they have access to this ancestral organ if they train their mind and have the correct knowledge to become the god as the Cyclops were, which they already have. This spiritual eye, as they call it, which science calls the pineal gland, is their communication band to the spirit world. Ancient arts like yoga even today teach their initiates on how to awaken this pineal gland just a little bit. And for the next several thousand years, the symbol of the pine cone, because the pineal gland is said to be the shape of a pine cone, about in between your eyes, just in the middle of your forehead, is where it's supposedly located. And it would come to symbolize the hidden history of Atlantis and the secret of the Cyclops. The advanced ancient architecture they left behind. As I opened the show with, at Tarragona, the city of Tarragona in Catalonia, with the ancient Cyclopean architecture. And the lost wisdom of the third eye, which again, the Illuminati believe remains inside them and allows them to become the enlightened ones. Atlantis' secrets, you see, of the Golden Age were said to be enclosed in deep columns below the Mediterranean Ocean, stored there in 2 pillar towers in the ocean, off the coast of Gibraltar, not far from Catalonia. The pillars appear prominently on the engraved title page of Sir Francis Bacon's Instauratio Magna, even, the Great Renewal, as it's known in English. Written in 1620, Sir Francis Bacon did an unfinished work of which the second part of his influential Novum Organum was published. Now, the motto along the base says in Latin, it translates to many will pass through and knowledge will be the greater. The image was based on the use of the pillars in Spanish and Habsburg propaganda. From Catalonia, the Illuminati believed that this knowledge has been passed on to the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, who postulated themselves with this knowledge as to become gods to their people through knowledge that they gained through Atlantis. Now, once the pharaohs had the information, the Phoenicians probably were the ones that gave it to them, found it in those pillars buried in the Mediterranean off the coast of Gibraltar that were in, first of all, the first made of iron inside to prevent the information from burning up, and then a coating of marble on the outside to prevent the moisture from getting in to rust the iron and destroying the documents within. So marble is non-permeable with water. Those two used to make the two towers. I know, 2 towers. So often in Masonic movements in this world now evoke the Twin Towers collapse that started all of this, what you and I are living through today. Yes, the information that was given to the ancient pharaohs wound up in the hands of King Solomon. And according to the Bible, Boaz and Joachim were 2 big, huge pillars which stood in the porch of Solomon's first temple in Jerusalem. Those columns are representatives of what you would call, in the occult world, the foundation of an ancient sacred science, once known to the Atlanteans. This sacred science is now being used against you and I by the operative Illuminati into the architecture of what they're building in this world. You see, just before the Atlanteans were wiped out, the Atlantis race became a nation of wicked magicians. And what happened is just what's happening to us again, because our leaders are wicked magicians. War was declared, which is going to repeat history with us also. And the story of which would be too long for me to get into tonight, but its substance can be found in the disfigured allegories of the race of Cain, the giants, and that of Noah and his righteous family in the King James Version of the Bible. The conflict came to an end by the submersion of Atlantis itself, which finds its imitation in the stories of the Babylonian and Mosaic flood. The giants and magicians, all flesh died, every man, all except, Xerxes and Noah, who are substantially identical with the great father of the demon of the character of the Popol Vuh, if you know about that, or the sacred book of the Guatemalans, which also tells of the escape of a group of men in a large boat, like the Hindu Noah. Yes, just like the Noah of the Bible escaping the flood. From the Atlanteans, the world has received not only the heritage of arts and crafts, philosophies and science, ethics and religion, the Illuminati believe, but also the heritage of hate, strife, and perversion. The Atlanteans instigated the very first war, and it's been said that all subsequent wars were fought in a fruitless effort to justify the first one and right the wrong from that ill-fated continent. History is going to repeat itself again, because that's what we're doing, righting wrongs. You see, the Atlanteans, the world, they believe, the elites, are the source for this ancient knowledge that was passed on to the Egyptians, then to King Solomon, the wisest man in the world, they called him. And they established themselves in Egypt, where they became the first divine rulers, telling all of the people they were God. Nearly all the great cosmologic myths forming the foundation of the various sacred books of the world are all based on the Atlantean mystery rituals. Now, I can tell you now that when Solomon got that information from the pharaohs, he set it at the very front of his first temple, the twin pillars from the foundation of an ancient sacred science once known by the Atlanteans, because that's how it was found after Atlantis submerged. Now, the great goal of today's modern-day Illuminati is to rebuild that Solomon's Temple, using that information, that ancient information that was passed on from the Atlanteans all the way up through to today. And they are still using their black magic powers and spells today. And they're going to install their one world government and their occult one, who will call himself God, but not the Holy One. Now, an important star, the star associated with sexual depravity, whoring after false gods. This symbol plays a huge role in this plot. The six-pointed star, today's flag of Israel, originally Solomon's seal. That's the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. Coming back for more in a minute. It's View from Space right here on Talk Radio, AM 640. Communicate by email only, space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. JT writes, Hollywood tanking. Well, he's giving me a headline here. Hollywood ending. Big studios cutting losses this weekend, pulling flops from theaters earlier than usual. Almost nothing is working, and the studios can't afford to waste any more money hoping things are going to be turning around. So they're pulling things early. All right. I can tell you right now that the Weinstein thing is actually, in fact, the harbinger. It's the warning light that's blinking. Weinstein is a Kabbalist. And there's a disruptor now in Hollywood because the big studios, studios that used to make the theater movies, that's all ending because you see content now is moving to other areas, and the way they get the content to the eyeballs is also moving. So you can see theaters closing also, along with these big Hollywood movie companies. We're shifting over because the disruptor is here, using Weinstein, the Kabbalist, through... What was I just talking about with the six-pointed star? Sexual depravity. As you can see, it's all starting to crumble down around theaters. Theaters. The Hollywood money will be fine, thank you very much. They'll be controlling content. It will be on other platforms. But say goodbye to going to that traditional theater. Thanks for the email, JT. Yes, the six-pointed star associated with sexual depravity. The hexagram from occult magic. Ancient times of Atlantis that I opened the show with. Passed on to the ancient Egyptians and then King Solomon. But how did Solomon, this figure, become so popular in Israel, the six-pointed star with Solomon? Well, the answer was that man, that king. After he became the king of Israel, he violated all the specific commands of the Jewish God to kings on an unprecedented scale. These special commandments of God to the kings, which Solomon violated like no other, are found in Deuteronomy 17, chapters 15 through 19. There's really no wonder that the goal of Masonry is to rebuild Solomon's temple. Actually, in the King James Version of the Bible, 1 Kings 3, verse 1, and Solomon made a bond with the Pharaoh, king of Egypt. There was the bond, getting the information, and took Pharaoh's daughter as his wife. You marry into the bloodline. And brought her into the city of David until he had made an end of building his own house, and the house of the Lord, and the wall of Jerusalem round about. The Bible will tell you. The influence of the daughter of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was no doubt considerable. It was monstrously huge. It was the symbolization of the two families coming together, the two bloodlines. As she was preeminent and most exalted among all of his wives, Solomon worshipped, among other gods, Ashtoreth, Ishtar, Isis, Venus, Aphrodite, whatever name you want to call her. Same name. These satanic rituals included human sacrifice, witchcraft, what Solomon got into, and sexual orgies. Solomon built high places, temples, and altars for these pagan abominations. For all his foreign wives joined in to burn incense and do sacrifice to their gods, as well as, well, who were out their body. It was also became known as Solomon's seal, this six-pointed star. He became a wizard, a consulter of demons, involved with forbidden occult powers of darkness, as the Atlanteans had once done, of Lucifer, Satan, and the devil. So the hexagram became a prominent symbol in ancient Israel, which can be traced no farther back than King Solomon, the wisest man in the world, they once called him. That's why. He adopted it from the Atlanteans. The Atlanteans gave it to the Egyptian pharaohs, and the Egyptian pharaohs, I just told you, spread it to King Solomon, along with a daughter, to seal the deal. These families are still very much in power and control today, by the way. You know, the hexagram, the flag of Israel today, originally Solomon's seal, is actually two triangles. One with its point pointing upward, representing man, and one pointing downward, represent the spirit world. You bring them both together, the spirit and the world of the physical, and you have, ta-da! The hexagram, the six-pointed stars it forms. So there is no evidence to connect the hexagram with David, his father. There's no reason to believe that David, a man after God's own heart, would ever, according to the Bible, would ever adopt a satanic, occult, pagan symbol for his shield. But Satan, the devil, the chief of liars and deceivers, would certainly love to have you think so. It's recorded in Revelations 12:9 and John 8, verse 44, for your own edification. Why and how, then, did the six-pointed star, the pagan occult symbol, become connected with the modern state of Israel? Even though it was Solomon's seal, it was adopted as the family crest by the Rothschild family during the 19th century, bringing that ancient symbol into the now. The Rothschilds bought a lot of property in Israel from the Turks and the Arabs. They were the largest financial supporters of the Zionist movement in the earliest decades. The influence of the Rothschilds and their heavy financial support of Israel, which led the Jewish nation to adopt the so-called Star of David as their own symbol as a nation, the flag. The Rothschilds gave Israel the six-pointed star, the hexagram, as a flag to Israel. A Masonic book called The Second Mile, an Eastern Star book, actually reveals that the six-pointed star is a very ancient symbol and one of very much power. The hexagram is used in magic, witchcraft, sorcery, occultism, and the casting of zodiacal horoscopes by astrologers. It's heavily used because it's considered to possess mysterious powers. The six-pointed star is used by magicians and alchemists all over the world. These sorcerers believe it represents the footprints of a special kind of demon called a trud. Interesting, isn't it? The six-pointed star is not a Jewish symbol. But an Egyptian symbol, which Israel adopted in the wilderness due to their apostasy, separating from their God. Acts 7:37-43. This is that Moses, to whom our fathers would not obey, but thrust him from them, and in their hearts turned back again into Egypt. And they made a calf in those days, and offered sacrifices unto the idol, and rejoiced in the works of their own hands. Then God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven, as it is written in the book of the prophets. O ye house of Israel, have you offered to me slain beasts and sacrifices by the space of 40 years in the wilderness? Yea, you took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your god Rephan, figures which you made to worship, and will carry you away beyond Babylon. Amos 5 verses 26 and 27 states, but you have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch, and Shun, Rephan, your images, the star of your god, the six-pointed star, which you have made yourselves. Therefore I will cause you to go into captivity beyond Damascus. So saith the Lord. That's the King James Version of the Bible, and as I tell you all the time when I quote it, the elite, the Illuminati, are going to follow the Bible to the very letter to bring about the destruction of this current system. It's the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. There's more right after this break. I'm the guy they call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Emails, please send them to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. The six triangles, and there's actually six triangles in the six-pointed star known as the hexagram, if you look and count them. It's six triangles, which is the Egyptian hieroglyphic for the land of spirits. In the astro mythology of the Egyptians, you can find belief in the first man god, who is Horus, and his death and resurrection as Amsu. The six-pointed star was the first sign of the hieroglyph of Amsu. Amsu was the risen Horus, the resurrected, reincarnated God, the first man-god risen from spiritual form. This is what the Illuminati believe. This is their religion. Now, this six-pointed star is associated with the worship of Saturn. So the beast is Saturn, of course, and his mark is the six-pointed star. Acts 7:43 in the King James Version of the Bible say, Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your god Rephan, figures which ye made to worship, and will carry them away beyond Babylon, as I stated earlier in the show. And it's the mark of Cain, worshipped by the Israelites in the wilderness as the Star of Repnan, which Strong's Concordance identifies with Kiun, which I believe is actually a secret form of translating the word Cain. Yes. Because isn't that what the powerful always do? Change their names to hide their identity as they move along through history? Both Cain, and Saturn are identified as Cain. The god of time was Kium in Egypt, or Saturn, and Kium is the same as Cain. There's an alternative spelling of it, too, in other philosophies around different parts of the world. Kiun or Cain is sometimes also called Kawan or Sakuth. Sakuth and Kawan and Kiun are all the same figure. And idolatrous worship is connected with those three in the different places that you go around the world in their mythology. So since Cain, linked with Saturn, the planetary name for Satan, the mark of Cain was the mark of Saturn, the six-pointed star. Cain means possession. Firstborn son, Samael, Satan, and Eve, and the first murderer, Cain, having murdered his twin brother Abel, conceived with Adam, the man, and the father. Now, in this overlapping form, the Star of David is the mark of the double Messiah, where one triangle intersects the other, the priestly Messiah and kingly Messiah. As such, it is the only true sign of Jesus, and it carries the extra meaning as being the representative of the bright Star of David's line that arose in the morning. Because you see, the coming Christ is going to have the same lineage and be from the house of David, of which Jesus Christ is. If the Star of David is a symbol of the unified messiahship of Jesus, it should be the mark of Christianity. Then the question has to be, what's the symbol of Judaism? The answer is the cross. This is the mark of what's called not a cross, but a taw in earlier times. And it's this shape of, or cross, or axe, upon which Jesus was crucified. The taw was the mark of Yahweh. The Kenites bore on their foreheads long before Moses came across them in the wilderness. Now the taw is the letter of Saturn. If you go deeper, the Golden Dawn religion, the Chaldean number for Satan is 666, suggesting that the mark of Cain was a prototype of the mark of the beast, the six-pointed star, received by those who will worship the sun god Saturn during the golden age of Saturn when they bring it back. This is the New World Order. The Occult Millennium, which will be shortened, I'm sure, as things are looking now. Some Jewish sources also say the mark of Cain was the seal of Solomon or Star of David. The hexagram. In ancient pagan mythology, Saturn ruled over the pre-flood kingdom of Atlantis and became the divine ancestor of all earthly patriarchs and kings. Kronos, or Saturn, Dionysus, Hyperion, Atlas, Hercules were all connected with a great Saturnian continent that were kings that ruled over countries on the western shores of the Mediterranean, Africa, and Spain, the very area of the once great Atlantis. One account says Hyperion, Atlantis, Saturn and Kronos were sons of Uranus, who reigned over a great kingdom composed of countries around the western part of the Mediterranean with certain islands in the Atlantic. Hyperion succeeded his father and was then killed by the Titans, history records. The kingdom was then divided between Atlas and Saturn, Atlas taking North Africa with the Atlantic islands, and Saturn, the countries on the opposite shore of the Mediterranean, to Italy and Sicily. Now, the period of Saturn's government was sung in later days by poets as a happy time when sorrows were unknown, when innocence, freedom, and gladness reigned throughout the whole land in such a degree as to deserve the title of the Golden Age. The six-pointed star is engraved on the Talisman of Saturn, which is used in ritual magic. It is a powerful item. On the first face is engraved a pentagram or a star with 5 points. On the other side is engraved a bull's head enclosed with a 6-point star. It's surrounded by letters composing the name Repha, the planetary genius of Saturn, obviously a reference to Refnan. And it traces back to the ancient Persians and the Magi, who were the astrologers, the soothsayers, the wizards, and the Persian Empire. Theophrastus, Paracelsus, revived in the 17th century the ancient doctrine of talismans, which he claimed to be able to use successfully in the treatment of illness and accidents. A talisman would make things go away. They still sell it to you today with a copper bracelet to get rid of some disease. It's ridiculous. But it's that old craft. Retread. Run again, as history repeats itself over and over. This medical doctrine, derived from the Kabbalah, or secret tradition of the Jewish rabbis, was said to be borrowed from the ancient occult sciences of Chaldea and ancient Egypt, who in turn got it from, yes, Atlantis. The talisman signifies an image, a figure, and was engraved in the form of an emblem or symbol on metals, consecrated to the genii of the 7 planets. This magical task, well, had to be carried out at a fixed time on a certain day, with the firm intention of attracting the talisman, the beneficent influence of the genius which was invoked, the spirit, whether for help or any other protective measures. There was a talisman of Saturn, one of Jupiter, one of Mars, one of the Sun, one of Venus, one of Mercury, and there was a talisman of the Moon. Preserved over the centuries. There's more right after this on Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS. I'm a Spaceman. This is AVFS and Talk Radio AM 640. Communicate, as I say, by email, space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Thanks for yours. Let me just call him TH. Says, hey, Space, I'm very concerned about the Illuminati-controlled mass media. They want to distract us every single day. Television, on radio, InstaFace, on Twitter. Constantly, day to day, it's an onslaught on constant information to keep us all distracted while they rob us blind. They know what they're doing. We know it as well, but do nothing. So the question is, are they just better at what they do? Or are we, the people, so dumb not to realize what's going on? How can we stop this? Help. Well, the only way to defeat the people with the knowledge is for you to understand the knowledge that they possess and the power that it has over you if you allow it. I've said many times, people say, oh, you come on and you say all of these things, and we believe you that things aren't going well and they're heading south fast, but what can we do? And I always say the same answer. Don't go to work on Monday. The world has to stop participating. You think that's ever going to happen? No. You have that competitive idea. If I don't go, someone will get my job. They'll take it on me. I won't have it, so they're chained. So, thanks for slipping me that email. TH, Sacramento, California. Oh, by the way, your Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. Very Masonic, MLB. Watch out. Watch out. There's an esoteric ritual going on here. I called it a while ago. As a matter of fact, when I was covering the Houston hurricane, the floods, that there would be a wonderful party at the end of this year with MLB and the Houston Astros as they win the World Series. Well, it's Game 7 tonight against the hated Yankees. And everybody thinks, wow, it's going to be the biggest markets in America. They're going to love making the money. They don't care about money. They have it all. It's about power. It's about control. And this esoteric ritual is going to have its way. I believe by the end of this evening, I'll be proven correct, it will be the Astros and Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. Here is the magical part. Houston, representing water, the flood. Recall the hurricane? Los Angeles, California, what are they going through? Just outside of L.A.? Wildfires. You now have a matchup of the two elements, water and fire, represented in a grand ritual in the World Series. And of course, when you mix water and fire, well, water puts the fire out. And we'll see that ritual, I believe. It'll probably go 7 games because 7 is the spiritual number. Oh, the MLB got quite a show planned, I'm sure, for us all, but that's my take on that part of it. Thanks again to the Sacramento, California email that just popped that into my mind. I completely forgot about that, as I'm deeply involved right now in the 6-pointed star and showing you the power from where it came, Atlantis, to the Egyptians, to King Solomon, and today's Illuminati believe that they are going to be building Solomon's third temple. And guess what is going to be built outside of that temple? You're right, the 2 pillars. Boaz and Yakin, representing the scientific, occult, black magic power, information that was put up in the very first temple with Solomon. Because that's where he got the information from. That's where the Atlanteans left it for the Phoenicians, who sold it to the Egyptians. And here's how to control people. And those Phoenicians, of course, great seafarers, took that information from those pillars they found off the Rock of Gibraltar and gave it for a price to the ancient Egyptian pharaohs who postulated themselves as God to their people with the information. And of course, therefore controlled by the Phoenicians, who are the tribe of Cain. Did you know that Noah was originally worshipped as Saturn, Atlantis, and the Philistine god Dagon? They're all fish gods. Water. They conquer by water, the water kings. Poseidon, the king of Atlantis, first to domesticate the horse, was the modern-day tank in those times, when he would take over other areas of the world. Noah is celebrated by the name Saturn, the hidden one, for that name was applied to him on account of his having been hidden in the ark in the day of the Lord's fierce anger, we're told. Now, out of the deluge, the flood, emerges Dagon, the fish god, or the god of the sea. In the secret mysteries, they sought to regain their influence and power by scenic representation of the flood, in which Noah was introduced under the name Dagon. Dagon, or Oannes, is another one. Oannes, a half-human, half-fish combination of a creature who was known as the Lord of the Flood, was said to rise out of the sea every day to teach his secret knowledge to those who followed him. Everything comes from under the water, doesn't it? It seems. From the beginning of Atlantis. He's mentioned in Samuel chapter 5 in the King James Version of the Bible, when the Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenant and placed it in the temple of Dagon. 2 nights later, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the Ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both the palms of the hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left of him. It's this character upon which Satan, Lucifer, is based. But the physical description attributed to him applied to an entire race of gods, or as they were described in the Bible, the Nephilim, or fallen angels, the Watchers, the great old ones, as they were also known. Dagon, the fish god, associated with a forehead and hands, the location of the mark of the beast in the King James Version of the Bible. Very succinct, isn't it? Very concise. Dagon's crown was the 6-pointed star, the hexagram. Revelation 13:1, and I saw the beast rise out of the, where? Sea. More next. Talk Radio AM 648, VFS. I communicate by email only. Spaceman at 640toronto.com, one address. The other, space at 640toronto.com. Just talking about, Atlantis, the 6-pointed star, and what's in store for us, because those are still heavy at play and figure prominently right smack dab in the middle of this whole mess that we're living in now. As I said earlier, last hour, I believe that very soon now, since it's been very, very quiet with Israel and Hezbollah, something is afoot. As we're now told by the Illuminati-controlled mass media that the Syrian war is winding down. Well, as you know, they're moving closer toward Israel. And then, of course, the disruption happens there, and then the two-state solution is going to be implemented. Watch it happen. How soon? Could be very soon. With Donald Trump's son-in-law, Kushner, working in the background. Now, by the way, real estate holders, the Kushner Group, just exactly as the Trump organization, real estate. And I wonder how much the property the Kushners have in Israel itself. Possibly even the Temple Mount. Possibly where Solomon's temple was once built. You know how tattoos are like a common thing now. Not only is it common, but most people desire it and consider it a really wonderful thing. You know where that began? It began with Revelation 13, verse 16. A mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. A tattoo. Because I believe it's going to be ink that is magnetized, that will have information inside the ink that will tell who you are, your health records, all of the pertinent information that's required for someone bumping into you, asking who you are. And it will reveal all. In the new system, there will be no cash, no money. The mark, the tattoo, in their right hand or in their foreheads will be their pass, their card, their credit card. 1 Samuel 5:4. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only did the stump of Dagon remain. See, in the mystery religions, both the forehead and the hands were tattooed during rites of initiation. In other words, once you were introduced to a demon, that demon's symbol was tattooed on the outside of your body to show that that demon was inside. And there were people that are deeply into voodoo that are totally covered in tattoos. And all of this started with Dagon. The reason was because Dagon's hands and head were cut off. The head, the forehead, the hands, the right hand is where the tattoos go now, or soon to go. Concerning Mithraism, sun worship, initiation was performed by two dignitaries, two priests who possessed the title of father and the herald. After the ceremony, the initiate would be considered the brother of the other initiates and the son of the father. In order to be recognized, though, by the father, he had to be tattooed. In other words, branded on both hands. On portraits of emperors, these tattoo marks are actually clearly visible on the forehead in the place of the hands. The tattoo bonds the initiate, you see, with the entity, the spirit symbolized by the tattoo, and enables him to communicate with that demonic power, or it tells the person outwardly that they are now marked by that demon. In some pictures of a tattooed man, we're faced with a permanent prayer to and identification with heavenly powers. At the same time, as a basic means of communication with them. That's the most generalized meaning of tattooing, bestowed in consequence of a rite or of the initiation which allows the communication to take place. At the same time, this initiation is a rite of admission into a social group, and the tattoo is the permanent mark of that initiation, or the badge of the tribe, if you like. All in all, tattooing tattooing belongs among symbols of identification and is interfused with their magic and mystic potency. Identification always carries double meaning, though. Always. ID, double meaning. It tends to invest the individual concerned with the properties and strength of the creature or thing to which that person is assimilated, and at the same time to immunize that person against its potential power to cause him harm. This is why tattoos depict dangerous creatures like serpents, scorpions, animals which are symbols of fertility, bulls representing power, lions, and the snake, of course, the serpent, as I mentioned, Lucifer. Identification also carries a sense of surrender, or even of consecration to whatever the tattoo symbolically depicts. You're labeling yourself then. It then becomes a badge of fealty, meaning the obligation of a believer to his God. A badge of fealty. The six-pointed star was used in mystery religion initiation rites also. In an ancient book on numbers, that initiate is defined as the one who has experienced and expressed 666 and found it not, who had dropped the 6 to become the 66 and thus found himself on the way. Later, again, he drops the 6 and becomes the perfected 6 form, the instrument and expression of spirit. This is the sign which the magus decorated himself with as he reached the highest degree of initiation. A magus, by the way, was a member of a hereditary priestly class among the ancient Medes and Persians. Notice it's hereditary? Yes, the secret bloodline keeps it in the family, keeping the power of control within the Illuminati families. This has always been done all throughout history. King Solomon reintroduced the six-pointed star to the kingdom of Israel, and the Talisman of Saturn became known as the Seal of Solomon. But it's really the six-pointed star. The hexagram. Put a hex on someone. You know what that means. Solomon's blatant idolatry angered the Lord God of the King James Version of the Bible, we're told, to the point of bringing about the division of the kingdom of Israel. Part of the evidence is the six-pointed star, which was called the Seal of Solomon from then on. You ever take a look at the false gods with which he was involved? First mentioned was Ashtoreth, otherwise called Astarte, the word actually meaning star. 2 Kings 23, verse 13, it is explicit. And the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the Mount of Corruption, which Solomon the king of Israel had built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Zidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. King Solomon also built an altar for Ashtoreth, worshipped her there, and also practiced Moloch rituals. It was at this time that the hexagram or six-pointed star came to be called the Seal of Solomon. And that Seal of Solomon was considered an all-powerful talisman, especially when accompanied by the Hebrew Yod. It was also combined with the Taw, the cross, or crux and Santa, as they call it in the center. How do the dictionaries define hexagram? The root word hex, divined as evil spell, witch, to bewitch. Solomon's seal, accepted as occult by the occult world. King Solomon was deeply involved in witchcraft, black magic. According to the Sorcerer's Handbook, King Solomon, traditionally known as an arch-magician, used a spell to banish infernal beings sent by the king of demons to extract human hearts. And then the names of the demons are then given. The Seal of Solomon is a graphical representation of 666, the number of the beast, and Solomon is the man whose number is 666. This is the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640. There's more, much more, straight ahead. I'm a guy to call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Emails, please, too. Direct them to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Tim Armstrong, I can use his entire full name because he's way out there. You'll find the answer, he writes, in a true conspiracy of the six-pointed star. And when you do, I am confident that, like me, you will conclude the beast is fast rising. And when he leaps into action, the world as we know it will be at an end. Let the wise understand. Signed, Tim Armstrong, Tonga. To give you an idea of where my emailer's from, Tonga's an archipelago, South Pacific, directly south of Samoa, about 2/3 of the way from Hawaii to New Zealand. Yes, this show touches many places around this world because it's the power of the internet. And I wonder if that was in the Twin Pillars' secret information given to the ancients from years before. You know the legend that Solomon possessed a seal ring with that six-pointed star on which the name of God was engraved and by means of which he controlled the demons, is told in the legend. This legend is especially developed by Arabic writers, who declare that the ring, on which was engraved the most great name of God, and which was given to Solomon from heaven, supposedly, was partly brass and partly iron. With the brass part of the ring signed his written commands to the good genii, and with the iron part he signed his commands to the evil genii or devils. The Arabic writers declare also that Solomon received 4 jewels from 4 different angels, and that he set them in one ring so that he could control the 4 elements. The legend that Asmodeus once obtained possession of the ring and threw it into the sea, and that Solomon was so deprived of his power until he discovered the ring was inside of a fish, also has an Arabic source. The legend of a magic ring by means of which the possessor could exorcise demons was current in the 1st century, as is shown by Josephus' statement that one Eleazar exorcised demons in the presence of Vespasian by means of a ring, using incantations composed by Solomon for Berkish. Some think that the legend of the Ring of Solomon, thrown into the sea and found afterward inside of a fish, is taken from the story of the Ring of Polycrates, a story which is related by Herodotus and others, which was the basis for Schiller's poem, Der Ring de Polycrates. Solomon's seal is now used as a talisman by all occult occultists. Any geometrical figure, especially that known as the double equilateral triangle, the six-pointed star, like the theosophical symbol, which is a pentacle, five-pointed star, is also Solomon's seal, and still earlier the sign of Vishnu, used by all the mystics, all the astrologers in the occult world. So the mark of the beast will be the symbol of the beast out of the sea with seven heads, which will be the earthly counterpart of Satan, the seven-headed dragon. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and the great dragon was cast, that old serpent, called the devil, and Satan, cast out. Revelation 12, 3 through verse 9. The seven-headed dragon and the beast of the book of Revelation have their origin in the seven-headed serpent, which is mentioned in the pyramid text. It is Satan who is the god of our planet and the only god in the order of divine evolution. Saturn, Satan, astronomically, is the seventh and last in the order of the macrocosmic emanation. So the occultists believe. The Saturnian spirit, Satan, ensouls the third great major or primary ray of deity. That's a quote from Vera Stanley Alder from the book Mars, Mystery Mark. And of course, the line that everyone knows, even if they've never picked up a Bible. And I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Revelation 13:1. It was the Arcadian legacy that was responsible for the mysterious sea beast, this Bisti Neptunus, as it was called, as symbolically defined in the Merovingian ancestry. The bloodline that will bring the Antichrist. The relevant sea lord was King Pallas of that time, a good old god of Arcadia, the ancient land of Cain. His predecessor was the great Oceanus. The immortal sea lord was said to be ever incarnate in a dynasty of ancient kings whose symbols always was a fish. That Merovingian dynasty, fish. Jesus Christ, called the fisher of men. Between the 5th and 7th centuries, the Merovingians ruled large parts of France and Germany. The ruler from whom the Merovingians take their name is, of course, Merovi. If you're a regular listener to a VFS on Talk Radio AM 640, you'd know that. A semi-supernatural figure worthy of, classical myth. His name echoes the French word for sea, of course, which is mer. Merovi's mother supposedly goes swimming in the Atlantic Ocean. In the water, she is said to be seduced by or raped by a beast of Neptune. In the Merovingian dynasty, the male line are descendants of the Fisher kings. These 7 heads represent the 7 kings of 7 Gentile world kingdoms, controlled, of course, by Satan, which have conquered Israel. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 kings, as written in Revelation 17, 9, 11. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he does come, he must continue a short space, and the beast was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, goeth into perdition. The 7 Gentile world kingdoms worshipped in the beast out of the sea in the form of fish god who ruled the pre-flood world, which was Atlantis. 5 have fallen: Egypt, Horus the first represents the soul life, which came by water, rather, to a dried up world. Here the fish was a sign of his incorporation in matter. Horus came by water as Ichthus, the fish, before there was a boat or an ark. The inundation of the Nile was the source of the life of Egypt in those ancient times. It was her annual salvation, and Horus, the fishman, her savior. The second was Babylon to fall. Babylon, Capricorn, symbolized the dual life of Ea, a god often shown walking in a great fish-shaped cloak with the head of a fish over his own head. Just exactly like the hats the popes wear these modern times today in 2017. It was said to have come from the ocean to teach men how to live. So the 7 Gentile world kingdoms, 5 have fallen. Number 1 is Egypt, 2 is Babylon, 3 is next on Talk Radio AM 640 and AVFS. I'm a guy that calls Spaceman's Talk Radio AM 640. Please direct your emails to spaceman@640toronto.com or spaceman at space at 640toronto.com. And thanks for yours. Appreciate it so much. I've been going through the 7 Gentile world kingdoms worshipped by the beast out of the sea in the form of a fish god who ruled the pre-flood world, starting from ancient Atlantis. The 7 heads are 7 kings, 5 have fallen. The first one to fall, Egypt. The second one, Babylon. The third, Assyria. In the great Assyrian temple of Ashur stood a large stone, that ritual basin dedicated to the god Oannes. Flanking him, 4 fish-clad priests. This is the illustration of an etching from Assyria on many vases of that time, many pieces of writings on walls, all the way back from 7th century BC. They are fish-clad priests, and all of those friezes that you see in the vases. Now, Medo-Persia is the 4th Gentile world kingdom to fall. Dagon, under the name of Mithra, was worshipped in those times. In Mithraic mysteries, Saturn was the sun god. And number 5 have fallen, Greece. Jerome calls Dagon the fish of sorrow, which goes far to identify that fish god with Bacchus. You know, the drunkard wine god of debauchery and sexual depravity, murder. And one is, who do you think that one is? Why, it's Imperial Rome. Because, you see, the European Union is that ancient Roman Empire being put back together. After all, what was the treaty that signed it into law, the European Union, when it first began? It's called the Treaty of Rome. One is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7. In other words, this Imperial Rome, the one that is going to be the final one that comes back, and is even the 8th. Because he is of the 7, you see, he was number, well, now, 6. The one that is Imperial Rome. The Roman god Saturn, known as Kronos to the Greeks, was the king of Atlantis. Saturn wandered to Italy, where he ruled as king of the Golden Age and gave the name Saturnia to the country. Uranus was deposed from the throne of Atlantis and succeeded by his son Kronos. Now we've seen that Kronos identified with the Atlantic, called by the Romans the Cronian Sea, by the way. He was known to the Romans under the name and ruled over a great Saturnian continent in the Western Ocean. And one is yet to come, Papal Rome, I believe, about the very time when the Bishop of Rome was invested with the pagan title of Pontifex. The Savior began to be called Hyksos, of the fish, thereby identifying him with Dagon, the two-horned mitre or hat which the Pope wore, or still wears, the Roman Catholic Church cardinals, is the very mitre or hat that was worn by Dagon in the ancient times. The kings who were controlled by Satan, king of Tyre, it's there in Ezekiel 28:2 recorded, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyre, Thus saith the Lord God, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am God. You're a believer. I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man. Ezekiel 28:2. Later in that chapter, verse 12, Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. The other king, another king controlled by Satan, king of Egypt. In Ezekiel 29:3, proof. Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers. See, in the pyramid texts, the king was seen as the sun, an embodiment of the solar deity, the sun god. In this capacity, he was the earthly representative and high priest of his heavenly father, Ra, a god in human form. That's the black magic power that the pharaohs received from the Atlanteans on how to control and convince people and manipulate them as they do you and I today. And the king of Babylon. The kings were controlled by Satan. In Babylonia, the ruler was seen as actually the manifestation of the deity, the eighth beast. The kingdom of Israel under the Merovingian false Christ that's coming, who will soon rule in the reincarnated King Solomon over the entire world from his third temple, which he will rebuild. The insignia of the Merovingian dynasty, by the way, the six-pointed star. The coat of arms of Rennes-le-Château, a Merovingian castle in the south of France, right around that area where the Atlanteans were said to have been in those ancient times. The Basque region, as well as Catalonia. France is a black triangle entwined with a white triangle that is exactly the same as the Seal of Solomon. The window at Alet Cathedral near Rennes-le-Château is also in the same shape as the Star of David, the six-pointed star. The Rothschilds' family insignia, the six-pointed star, actually became the Zionist symbol later as the official flag of Israel as the Rothschilds decreed it. Finally, the State of Israel was created by the United Nations in 1948. Its symbol, a six-pointed star, adorns the Israeli Knesset and flies on the flag of Israel. So, looking back, the star was an Egyptian occult symbol, which King Solomon adopted when he went into idolatry and witchcraft and built an altar for Ashtoreth. It was seen in Arab associations with Jews, and these were obvious Kabbalists, believing in the books of Enoch and the power of black magic, till the 16th century and the influence of the Kabbalist Isaac Luria to the 17th century, And when Mayor Amschel Bauer, the Rothschilds, used it on his door as the family emblem, crest. Then he changed his family name to Rothschild, incorporating the Seal of Solomon into his family's coat of arms. Finally, it became the insignia for Zionism. Yes, the hexagram has been used in ceremonies both to call up demons and to keep them away. The six-sided or hexagram star is revered as a religious symbol by the Hebrews, who call it the Seal of Solomon, as I've proven over and over again in the last hour, and the Hindus, who call it the mark of Vishnu, a god-man who was half man, half fish. From the Dog Star Sirius? Possibly. More next on Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm the Spaceman. I'm the guy to call the Spaceman. Let's Talk Radio, AM 640. Got a critique of the show? I've got some information you'd like to pass along, or you just want to say hi? Where in the world you're listening to AVFS on Talk Radio, AM 640 from? Use space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. So, last segment when I left off, I was talking about the hexagram that's been used in ceremonies both to call up demons and to keep them away. The six-sided hexagram star, also the Seal of Solomon, now the flag of Israel, and of course connected to the Hindus too, with the mark of Vishnu, as it's called. A god-man who was a half-man, half-fish, possibly from outer space, aliens. You see, this Seal of Solomon is also remarkably similar to the symbol used by the Raelians, whose occult that, like a lot of other New Age groups, believe that scientists from another planet created all life here on Earth using DNA. This DNA just surfaced in our lexicon in the past 25 or so years. DNA, as they call it, is man trying to find out how life is formed, then copy it themselves, which they will never be able to do. But here's what the Illuminati believe about DNA. The ancient Kabbalic symbol of the Tree of Life is the DNA, portrayed by the biblical Torah. It's now coming to be viewed as a live, vibrating structure now inside of our cells. Many modern scientists see DNA as a shimmering waveform configuration, able to be modified by light, changed by radiation, create magnetic fields or sonic pulses. The legacy of Thoth, Enoch's black magic, suggests that this so-called language of light, the DNA, the harmonic science of the ancients, could actually affect the human being. Enter sacred geometry here. The Illuminati use that, as well as astrology and numerology, to deceive and cast their black magic spells. They believe the Merkaba spirals us by virtue of our DNA out of this reality, or it's possible that it can, and spirally spin us from one reality to another. 6 pairs of twin strands. I've been talking about a 6-pointed star, haven't I? The hexagon. 6 pairs of twin strands. 6 is the Star of David and Merkaba. 12 strands, 12 tribes of Israel. We're all supposedly supposed to have a Merkaba field around us, and we're supposedly using it to connect with the higher dimensions, those that are enlightened, of course. It is the divine light vehicle, you see, used by the masters, the Illuminati, to connect with and reach those in tune with the higher realms. This also supposedly balances your yin-yang, your duality, your polarity, the electromagnetic energies. Now, in the sacred mystery schools, sacred geometrical exercises were the basis of their beliefs. It was understood that in order to transform your physical body into light, that you had to create an energy field of light around you in order to separate you from the lower vibrations. The Merkaba is the vehicle of light mentioned in the Bible by Ezekiel. Mer, as in Merkaba, mer means light. In French, it's sea. Mer, ka meaning spirit, ba meaning body. So light, spirit, body. The Merkaba rotates when activated. The Merkaba means the spirit, the body, surrounded by counter-rotating fields of light. Wheels within wheels, if you can picture that. Spirals of energy, as in DNA, which transports the spirit, the body, from one dimension to another. The Merkaba can take on many forms of light. It's made up of 2-star tetrahedrons. The Merkaba can connect into the grid systems of the Earth, the Illuminati believe, if it's done right, the Christ grid and the other grid systems. The Merkaba could serve to balance all chakras and lead to, well, synchronization. Make all one. The Merkaba meditation incorporates pranic breathing techniques, too, which brings life force energy, they say, directly into the body. The merge of the hourglass becomes the Star of David, which is the spiraling frequency of ascension. You know, as the hourglass comes to a very, very tiny point and then empties into something another larger, it's exactly what the two triangles are to form the hexagram when they're pulled apart or touching only at the tips of their points. 12 is about time, or in the illusion thereof created by the energies of the Great Pyramid, combined with its ethereal twin, the Pyramid Twins, the hourglass, time. The way our souls supposedly are to spiral into consciousness. Now, according to the Hopi Blue Star prophecy, Hopi prophecy speaks of twin kachinas, white and blue, the twin merging of the self, the twin pyramids, DNA, the twin towers imploding, referring to the Kundalini. A place of global communication. The Twin Towers didn't fall, they imploded in New York, merged into each other. This was the wake-up call by the Illuminati for all humanity. And the Great Pyramid? It's a double helix. The twin serpents, Twin Towers, are said to represent Ida and Pingala, the two tunnels or pathways of psychic energy which reside in the body and which channel and regulate the flow of psychic energy. This flow must become balanced into a central tube for the Kundalini, the spiritual energy, to flow safely. The Kundalini is directly augmented or suppressed in the body by the patterns of breathing and of breath that each person uses. And it's strengthened, of course, by meditation. You know, or I just described to you, a trance, where people go into when controlled by demons. A trance. And we're supposedly going to be made whole, complete, with this process. Osiris was said to have this pillar, or his wife of the divine marriage, the chemical wedding. This is describing what happens when the Kundalini, the spiritual energy, rises through the chakras to the pituitary gland and joins the cosmic energy in the pineal gland that I talked about earlier at the beginning of the show to form the divine marriage. After undergoing many initiations, the adept can attain enlightenment, symbolized by the presence of the elect, or the 144,000 and fully functioning DNA in his body. When that individual has mastered their own individual flow of energy and unsealed or opened each chakra in its corresponding systems of biochemical, endocrine glands, and organic energy, they must then face the final struggle, or Armageddon, which is the prerequisite for attaining the 8th level of psychic power, the fully enlightened individual, attaining Christ consciousness. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. There's more right after this. Unbelievable, isn't it, what's coming? It's the Spaceman. This is AVFS. That's all it is. And Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Yes, the fully enlightened individual. Once you learn how to put yourself into a trance, as I've already explained to you, you can attain the Christ consciousness. They then can master the physical and metaphysical laws of karma, which is how a person becomes immortal, a god, and is freed from the necessity to reincarnate. You ever heard of seventh heaven? That's where it came from. And in the 8th, you become a god and no longer need to reincarnate. There are supposedly 7 heavens. The 8th makes you the god. In this climb of learning through knowledge to become God, which is what this new system is. This new religion is, with this new world order on the way. Look at the numbers. 64 elements of DNA are the total of 20 amino acids with varying quantities of this 64 elements, plus 2 and 1 stop element. Kabbalah and the Tarot both describe a belief system with 22 elements. The crop circle cards also use a similar system. So a total of 20 amino acids plus 2 gives you that tarot card occult number 22. And 4 is the most used number in the whole universe. 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. 1 is always different, opposite polarity, working as a centerpiece for the other 3. On this level, we have gravity, 1, electromagnetic force, 2, weak atomic force, 3, strong atomic force, 4. The science of bonding atoms into molecules is the atomic forces. The 4 elements. 4 is the most used number in the whole universe. Earth, water, fire, air. And I believe 2 of those, water and fire, are going to be showcased in a ritual with Major League Baseball, with Houston representing the water. Los Angeles, fire. Because the wildfires, of course. Then there's cytosine, thymine, adenine, guanine, nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. 4s. Now, Cytosine is the fundamental building block of DNA. Thymine, number 2. The third building block of DNA is adenine. And the fourth, and there are 4, like building blocks, like a building, 4 walls, guanine. Now, you have to ask yourself, with all of this knowledge, the adepts, and where the rest of the world are, the unwashed masses, as they say, which dimension are we on? Bear with me, because this really gets good. Taken from Isaiah and Daniel. For in the sky the stars in Orion will shed their light no longer. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will no longer give its light. I'm going to shake the heavens. The Messiah will give a sign to the nations. Michael will appear. The Son of Man will come on the clouds of heaven, and the Messiah shall gather the lost ones of Israel from the 4 corners of the earth. The elites believe the second coming is happening within. The throne of God is a sacred geometrical symbol for the golden mean, and represents the seat or basis for the created world and rebirth, moving from 4 to 5, equaling life. The phrase 12-strand DNA is a metaphor linked to sacred geometry, and the digital code is 1212. 12 around one source, returning to source in a new creation at this time. Could it be the double helix, our so-called foundation, is the 2 tribes of Israel, Judah, and Benjamin? We lost the original full-functioning DNA, the multi-dimensional reality, as it's put, but the other 10 tribes of Israel are being returned to us, symbolically, of course. The 12 tribes of Israel by birth date are Columba, Reuben, Simon, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Manasseh, Ephraim. Implosion of the 2 towers in New York, the double helix and Kundalini's Ida and the Pinkala, the 2 tunnels or pathways of psychic energy. When balanced, they become one central tube, and it opens the door for full DNA connection. And that's exactly what the World Trade Center tower attack was all about, in a physical form, but really meaning the spiritual. It's all about connecting to the second. It's the Illuminati's job to connect the 12 tribes of Israel, the full DNA, return to source, and a new creation will be birthed, they believe. But just how are they going to do that? Jacob's pillar stone, or stone of destiny. Possible DNA? Jacob used a stone for a pillow the night he wrestled with God. After God changed his name to Israel, he then used it as a pillar to mark the covenant he made with them. Tradition has it that the stone that he put his head on was taken to Egypt, and later to the Promised Land, when the Israelites came out of Egypt. The stone of destiny I'm talking about. Eventually, it ended up Are you ready for this? It ended up being a major piece for the coronation of every British king that's ever ruled. This stone of destiny. It's called Leothale in Ireland. Jacob's pillar stone was used as the pillow, as I said, upon which Jacob saw the vision from God in a place he called Bethel, the house of God, which translates to Bethel. The stone from that monument was predestined, supposedly, to become Christ's throne on earth, and was taken by Jacob and his children to Egypt. 400 years later, during the exodus from Egypt under Moses and the wilderness 40-year punishment wandering, the Leophale, the rock, the stone of destiny, was carried on a pole until the Israelites conquered Canaan and built Jerusalem. The Leophale, as they call it in Ireland, or stone of destiny, then became the throne of King David, who slew Goliath, remember, the giant, with a stone from his sling. Every one of the succeeding kings from David's line, the house of David, have been crowned upon the Leophale, Jacob's pillar, the stone which he laid his head on, which was kept in God's house, the holy temple built by David's son, King Solomon, on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, until, that is, King Zedekiah was overthrown by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon for breaking the covenant. Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon's soldiers destroyed Solomon's holy temple on the Mount Moriah, which is supposedly the holiest place on earth because it was where Abraham centuries before had offered to sacrifice his miracle son Isaac for God. Ezekiel 21, verse 26 states, "Thus saith the Lord, I am. Remove the diadem, the sovereignty, and take off the crown. This shall not be the same. Exalt him that is low," that being the line of Zara, "and abase him that is high," the line of Phares. Ezekiel 21, verse 27 states, "Will overturn it. It shall be no more. Overturned until he comes, whose right it is, and I will give it him, Shiloh, the Christ." So from Egypt the stone was shipped through Sicily, then Spain, overturned, and Ireland, then overturned again, before arriving in Scotland, where it was overturned again, and finally placed in the throne of England, the final overturn before Christ returns. The theft of the stone, Westminster Abbey of 1950, is recorded before Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953, the Queen of Israel, defender of the faith. Queen Elizabeth II is not descended from the royal line of David, from the house of Judah. They are impostors, and from the tribe of Dan came. But Prince William and Harry are related legitimately to all the kings and queens that Britain ever had, including including the Roman Catholics, which Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Charles, her son, does not have. It's because of the mother, Princess Diana. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. There's more right after this break. I'm the Spaceman at AM 640. Please email me at space@640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. And I thank you so much for the one that you've sent. I really appreciate them. I really do. Now, this is extremely important for you to understand. So I just want to go over it one more time for you. It's recorded, and as I've said before many times, the Illuminati are going to use the King James Version of the Bible to the letter. Going to follow it to the letter to bring about what it says is going to be brought about. Ezekiel 21:27. I will overturn, it says it 4 times. I will overturn, and it shall be no more. Overturned until he comes, whose right it is, and I will give it to him, Shiloh, the Christ. Genesis 49, verse 10 also. See, as I said, the Leophale, the stone of destiny that Jacob put his head on and wrestled with God and said his bloodline shall be, the house of David shall be the rulers. The divine right of kings, that's where it comes from. It says it 4 times, I will overcome or overturn. And then, after the 4th, I will give it him. I will give it to him, the one whose right it is. So I've been telling you that before Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953, she was known as the Queen of Israel, the defender of the faith, but Elizabeth II is not descended from the royal bloodline of David, from the tribe of Judah. Neither is her son Charles. They are imposters and are from the tribe of Dan. But Prince William and Harry are related legitimately to all the kings and queens that Britain ever had, plus the Roman Catholics. That means through Princess Diana, who was their mother, their bloodline is tied back into the Roman Catholic bloodline of kings, including Mary, Queen of Scots, the true heir to the throne of Britain, who was murdered, and another took their place. Now, the highest royal family of the occult, Cain, is now mixed with the House of David in Prince William and Prince Harry because of Princess Diana being the mother related to Mary, Queen of Scots. The bloodline of royal Roman Catholic kings and queens. So, as Queen Elizabeth, who is not of the House of David, was about to be coronated in 1953, she did not use the stone of Scone. It was overturned, stolen. The British history of the stone of Scone, which every monarch Britain ever had, was coronated with this stone under their throne, goes like this. There are actually 2 stones called the Stone of Destiny. One is obviously not the genuine Stone of Destiny, but is in fact a fake, presumably made by Bailey Bertie Gray even. That has been, postulated. That they even know the person who made the rock, the fake rock, look exactly like the real one. Then there's the connection with Columba of Kells, and Iona being guardian of the stone, because the Lia Fail, as it's known in Ireland, was allegedly kept in Columba's church in Dundee until the authorities found out and sealed up the building with the alleged real Lia Fail still inside of it. It was then rescued by the Knights Templar, we're told, to have it at present secreted away somewhere in Adamnan's church at Dullin, Perthshire, possibly, is the rumor. Yet again, we have the link with Columba because Adamnan's church is built in the grave mound of Adaman, who wrote the life of Columba around 685 AD, shortly after Columba's death. Columba is confirmed by his prophecy titled Cineas, Cian, Aeneas, Cian from the south, meaning Cain, of course, in which the physical second coming of Christ to be King of Ireland is foretold, an event that will finally defeat the English Davidic monarchy, reunite Ireland under Christ's sovereignty, and bring peace and prosperity to all of its people. Yes, so states the King James Version of the Bible. The Illuminati are going to follow that to the letter. There is a Stone of Destiny on display. It's at Edinburgh Castle in Scotland, but is that the original? In ancient Irish mythology and religion, Tara was also the sacred home for the Ari, later the Irish, or Irish as we know them today, who ranked below the lily gods, yet above the people. Ireland, Airyland, takes its name from the Aries, the lion. Ilion in Hebrew, like lion, isn't it? Or Aryans. Ireland is considered the great motherland of the Aryan race, otherwise known as a part of Atlantis, Tula or Tula. Now you know why the British monarchy wants a chunk of Ireland, Northern Ireland, bit off one piece on the northern east side, at the tip of the island. They need that land badly. And by the way, the border for Northern Ireland ends just exactly 130 kilometers before you reach Meath, the county where the Lia Fail was originally placed. Abraham had two sons, Isaac, Ishmael. Ishmael lived 137 years. So states Genesis. He had 12 sons, became the founders of Ishmaelite tribes that separated, or rather spread from Egypt after they left their father to what is today ancient Iraq, or today modern day Iraq. A lot of the modern day Arab peoples correctly recognize that they are the descendants of Ishmael, while the Jews and the rest of the Israelites are descendants of Isaac, but are all descended from one, Abraham. Israelite is the ethnic group claiming a covenant with God and descent from Abraham and Isaac, especially from Isaac's son Jacob, also called Israel. Now, the Christians and Jews from the Jacob's son Judah's line, and particularly from Judah's son Phares, the so-called firstborn. Judah, the other son, Zara, and the Zaraites populated Spain, northern Mediterranean, the Trojans, and the islands far off, the Brits and Emerald Isles in Ireland, joining their cousins the Danites. Dan is Jacob's fifth son, from which the Cain family is from. One group is not better than the other. This is symbolic. It's about connecting to the sacred. Purely all symbolic. The Illuminati believe they must uncover the truth, though, and connect to our true history and true lineage. Simply put, this is the excuse to form a one-world government they will say is God's plan, when it's really the plan of Satan. Through this plan, they believe many will experience paradise, the land of milk and honey, through the power of their thought forms and consciousness, their Camelot. This ability is called the crossing. It's known as the crossing. Its root is from the word Hebrew, crossing the river Jordan into paradise and the Red Sea into freedom. The most likely origin of word Iban, Hebrew, is taken from bra, which means to cross over to a boundary. Included in this thought is that a Hebrew would be one who crossed over, or one who went from place to place. A nomad, a traveler, a wanderer, a stranger, an alien. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. There's more, and it's next. I'm the guy to call space. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Got a question? Got some information you want to pass along? Just want to say where in the world you're listening to AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640 from. Just use Spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. So I've been talking about the living language of light, also known to the ancients as Hebrew. According to Michael Zarian, the seat of religion and civilization is found in the ancient British Isles where the Druids once ruled. He believes the real Hebrews were the ancient Irish, and use etymology, the meaning of words of many Gaelic Celtic words and scholars, to back up his claim. Meath, Ireland, where the Tiafel, by the way, was placed, was home of the Druid councils, and Tara was the capital, the seat of the high chieftains. And in the movie Gone with the Wind, Tara, of course, is the plantation, the home that was so loved by the losers, Confederates. So as one of their leading beliefs, souls are not annihilated, but pass after death from one body to another, reincarnate. And they hold that by this teaching, men are much encouraged to valor, through disregarding the fear of death, you see. Well, I'll always have another body coming up anyway. They also discuss and impart to their young many things concerning the heavenly bodies and their movements, the planets, the stars, the size of the world and our Earth, natural sciences, and the influence and power of the immortal gods. You know who wrote that? Julius Caesar. He wrote that about the Druids in his writings called the Gallic Wars. The Irish are one of the most ancient nations that I know of at this end of the world, and are from as mighty a race as the world has ever brought forth. The words of Edward Spencer, writer and British government official in Ireland. Way back in 1596, he said that. You see, there's been a smokescreen that's been maintained around Ireland since the English invasion, and the consequent looting of that island with the destruction of her sacred shrines, which was meant to obscure her great past and her contribution in letters, science, culture, true religion, and civilization itself. It goes without saying that we owe more to ancient Ireland, Erie, as it was known, for these blessings than any other people or nation. So says the author Conor McDowell. Because Egyptian artifacts are found in remote regions of Ireland, people wonder how could people from the Middle East have traveled across the sea in boats which they are not meant to have had? How could they have navigated the seas and the oceans to come to such a place, live, die there, and leave their remains behind them? Those are questions that puzzle a lot of those people who have brought the lies. I mean, just lock, stock, and barrel accepted these lies as truth. Lies perpetrated by the Illuminati concerning the ancient world. The fact that Egyptian relics are found in Ireland, or that Irish relics, such as the Ohio Serpent Mound and round towers, are found in the Americas. The Illuminati are embarking on a plan that will unravel all the lies they say and reveal the truth about mankind as to his destiny and his true purpose. The truth remains, the word Hebrew referred to only in the root language of the world, Gaelic, and to the cult of Druidic priests whose astral mantic knowledge brought enlightenment to all corners of the earth. It was only much later in history that the world's picking up the meanings were rendered falsely, lied to, and made to refer to ethnic and racial status. The proof for that identity theft still exists, and it is indisputable. Adders meant the Druid Magi, the black magic magicians. This word adders comes from the Gaelic nadred, meaning serpent, or from the earlier nadir. And GN, when you spell nadir, is also the prefix of gnosis, from the Greek meaning esoteric knowledge of the spiritual truth held by the ancient occultists to be essential to salvation. Gri becomes Kun in modern times. The G or Gian is the symbol of the wise ones whose worship it is of the serpent. This is the reason why the Masons employ the G in the center of their compass and rule, which signifies measurement. And as an extension, knowledge. The letter G of the Masons may also be taken from the word Gaonim, the elite members of the Judaic Talmudic schools in ancient Babylon. But since the Egyptians and Semites got their sacred knowledge from the Druids, who did not have their beginnings, by the way, in the West at all. No, the Druids originally were from Egypt. The early supposition is probably the correct one, but all is said and done. The G, when written in the lower case, clearly references the serpent. The High King of ancient Ireland was called Nuada. This comes from the word Nadred and means wise serpent. The ruler of chieftain in Ireland, as well as in Egypt, was a master of all the arts, a semi-enlightened being, a druid. The word Hebrew did not relate to a particular race, but to the wise ones, originally the Iberu, or the Ebrach of Ireland, and later of Egypt. These were an ancient race of arch-magi who worshipped the stars and the zodiac and who had churches all over the world. It was incredibly important for the ones who controlled the modern church to obscure, to hide the existence and origin of these high priests of the sun for sun worshippers, while their sun-worshipping Masonic ways were quietly incorporated secretly into true Christianity. It was done in a couple of ways, which caused all the confusion, conscious mistranslation, and by the deliberate misspelling of words. So the first attempt at tricking people with certain words concerning the Gaelic word Ebrach. This is the origin of Hebrew. The letter H was placed before the Gaelic term to disguise its original meaning. So it gave it a Hebrach or Hebrew sound. The second deception had to do with what they say is a chance similarly between the words Iberu and the word Apiru. It was allowed to be conveniently and surreptitiously, meaning cleverly hidden, so nobody would notice. Turned into a name for a race of people. The ancient word Apiru can be found in Sumerian, Assyrian, Babylonian, and Egyptian texts. It's meant as a wanderer, an immigrant, or an undesirable person or group of people. It was used to name those who were living within the borders of a sovereign country, but who were a disturbance or a nuisance and who weren't wanted. It may also have come from the word abor, or obor, which means passers-by or travelers, those without a homeland. And are we dealing with that a lot these days? This is Talk Radio, AM 640, I'm Space. Please direct your emails to space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. So I was saying before the break, the great deception with words, mixing up the words, the different spellings, Iberu and Apiru, mean totally different things. The ancient word Apiru is found in ancient Sumerian, Assyrio-Babylonian, and Egyptian texts. It meant a wanderer. That's not Hebrews. It's Apiru. It's also thought to have been the name for farmers or shepherds. This connotation allowed some researchers to assign the name Hebrews to the invaders known to Egyptians as the Hyksos peoples. There's a lot of confusion over the origins of the race of Hyksos, who once conquered Egypt and reigned there for almost 200 years. The word Hyksos, by the way, which means shepherd king, and some say was only used to describe the leader or king and not the whole tribe or the race. They were Phoenicians, the ones who gave the information to the Egyptians from the Atlantean columns, known as the Towers of Hercules. The Hyksos kings, according to some scholars, were certainly not Hebrew at all or Israelites at all, but I believe they were people, in fact, from the ancient tribe of Dan, the Canaanite tribe. I believe the Hyksos were the Canaanites. And this is the blood lineage of the union between Satan and Eve in the Garden of Eden. This is the group of ferocious, warlike people, the Canaanites, who were the first ones to circumnavigate the globe on the oceans, the Hyksos, and were the first to use horses in battle in that area of the Middle East. A distinct advantage, wouldn't you agree? I also connect them with Poseidon, the supreme god of Atlantis, who was the god of the seas and also has the horse as one of his symbols, as he was the very first one to domesticate horses to be ridden and used in battle. This ancient knowledge was handed down to the Hyksos, the Phoenicians, from their ancestors from Atlantis, then given to the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, then on to Ireland, and then into England, and then the British Empire, and, well, you're caught up. The real Hebrews, or wise men, were really the Irish, the Phoenicians, who had brought culture to Egypt in the earliest periods of history after the great cataclysms which sank the great continent of old, the one they call Atlantis. Check out the works of master investigators like Connor McDarry, Alvin Boyd Kuhn, and Jerry Massey, and you'll see evidence that the Hebrew alphabet, with its 22 letters, originally is taken from the Egyptian, and before that from Ireland. And it's in fact a long-lost, non-hieroglyphic script. Because after all, man started in Iraq and grew from there, spread to other countries from there. So really, we're all immigrants on every country around the world and every person. Christianity came from Judaism too, right? But it never has been truthfully divulged where the Judaism had its origins and home, or were the Hebrews, who were the Hebrews and who were the Jews? The word Hebrew and Jew, deceptive. They've been conferred on people of the Aramaic race, all right, but it's a misnomer to call this people the modern so-called Jews. Conor McDarry mentions this in his book, The Bible, an Irish book. He goes on to say, Hebrew was a second secret dialect, which was devised by the Irish priesthood to preserve their sacred lore and rituals. It was used to keep exclusivity to the text for the priests. This was the way of keeping all knowledge of sacred things secret from the uninitiated, you see. It was taken over and made use of by the Roman Catholic Church to conceal and to make believable the secret fraud that the Illuminati have perpetrated on the Christian world. Because you see, in ancient times with the Roman Catholic Church, no one had a Bible. No one could read it. Only the priests could tell you what the Word of God was out of that Roman Catholic Bible. Connor McDarry goes on even further to say, Hebrew was never spoken by the Aramaic people in Syria, the so-called Jews, or by people of any other country. It was used by the ancient Irish priesthood of Lessa, exactly the same way as Latin is used in the Roman Catholic Church to keep the secrets from the multitudes. Hebrew, in short, the word, is the language which enables men to pass from one meaning to another, which explains, interprets, gives the allegorical meaning. By Hebrews, therefore, Moses does not mean the Israelites, but man. Israelites are Egyptians who were schooled in the Hebrew language and in the knowledge of Ambres, the initiated, and the initiators. Although the name Hebrew, used for language of the Bible, belongs to the period of the Bible's formation, the name Hebrew, used as a name for a race of people, goes way further back than that. Related words show up in ancient Sumerian, Assyria, Babylonian, and Egyptian culture texts in the forms of Sa and Gaz and Hapiru and Apiru, as I was saying. These words refer to individuals and groups who were not accepted within the accepted political structures of patronage, alliances, and loyalties that govern society. These Hebrews were outlaws. Whether Moses lived or not, he could not have led any mass exodus from Egypt into Canaan, which was Palestine in those days. No sharply defined Israelite tribes existed, says Rabbi Elmer Berger. At any time when anyone called Moses may have led small groups out of Egyptian slavery, the Habiru, or Hebrew, then were already established in Canaan, having reached it long before from Babylon on its far side. Their name? Habiru. It speaks to no racial or tribal identity at all. It means nomads. The initiated, who had passed through the inferior grades and attained the high rank of autops, or eyewitnesses, as they were called by the whole pagan world, Israelites and Hebrews. The name of Israelite, Jews, or Hebrews did never designate a political or national body at all, but were the name which, from an infinitely remote antiquity, designated the Uparakts, the autops, the Rishavites, to signify the highest order of the initiated in those holy mysteries, and to whom alone were committed to the oracles of God. So says Reverend Robert Taylor. Another author of The Celestial Ship of the North, Valencia Straighton, she says the Jewish glyph and Hebrew language are not original at all, but borrowed from the Egyptian Druids and are considered sacred. The word Hebrew is made up of the hieroglyphs, symbols and myths of the Egyptians and their gods, she states. Now, the high Druids would observe the surrounding heavens to estimate which stars or constellations of importance were prominent. Then the town or locale would be named and found on that celestial talisman. Great energy went into this. In other words, a town or some area would have to be named and founded on a celestial talisman. This is why so many national state flags and seals, as well as heraldic insignias and coats of arms, feature stars, chevrons, strange hybrid animals. The hybrid animals? I'll explain next on Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS. More next. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Thanks for yours. So I was saying before the break, the high Druids would look at the stars above, estimate what stars or constellations of importance were there directly overhead. Then the town would be named and founded on that celestial talisman. All of the towns and places were named that way. And that's why so many, as I stated before the break, many national and state flags and seals, as well as heraldic insignias and coats of arms of families, have stars, chevrons, and strange hybrid animals. The hybrid animals, by the way, were to represent certain zodiacal houses. Everything on national flags have to do with the ancient knowledge of the heavens, the sky, not politics. And I can go farther if you want, and I will. If you really and truly want to know the absolute truth about politics, politics is occultism. It is a cult. Everything is hidden and behind closed doors. All symbols are embedded in the politicians' moves and decisions. Speaking of symbols, you got a minute? Check out the Queen of England's royal coat of arms. Take a real close look at it. The belt surrounding the shield bears the motto of the Order of the Garter: On y soit qui mal y pense, or shame on him who thinks evil of it. The motto at the bottom of the crest says, Dieu est mon droit. Translation? God and my right. But you know what it actually means? It actually means God and my birthright. Who said I was king or queen? God. So, contained in the coat of arms, Queen Elizabeth II, the lion of the tribe of Judah, in the preeminent right-hand position wearing the crown. The unicorn is placed on the opposite side, giving it equal stature with the lion. The unicorn, by the way, is the symbol of the Antichrist. It's a horse with a horn growing out of its pineal gland. The gland located in between your eyes, where the Hindus put their caste mark dot. And this is where the gland is that supposedly is the third eye and is thought to have been holding mystical powers. As per Atlantis at the beginning of this show, inner vision is also given by this third eye. The Harp of David is also on this crest, this coat of arms, which is on the bottom of the coat of arms, recognizing the Davidic covenant and symbolizes the marriage of the two lines of Judah and Ireland through Jeremiah. The houses of Lancaster and York used red and white roses, the balance of red and white, Ida and Pingala, the feminine masculine. It's alchemy. Red and white springs of Avalon, balance of inner and outer worlds, feminine and masculine. The unconscious and conscious mind represents. The war, called the Battle of the Roses, was really the battle that was decided which side, the mother or the father, would decide the path through lineage or bloodline for kings and queens. In the United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth's official title is Queen Elizabeth II by the grace of God. In the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and her other realms and territories, Queen, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. What faith? Judaism. Christianity, of course. Prince Charles has remarked a while ago that it should actually say the defenders of the faiths, with an S on the end, leaving out no religion, blending them all into one, the coming New World religion, Luciferianism. And the word Celt, it's another word for Israelite, Celtish, British Israelites by birth, for example, people of the covenant in the Torah, the Bible, and the Ark. And the British, the word British, is not English, it's Hebrew. Brit, Barrett, meaning covenant in Hebrew, and in Welsh, Ish means man or people of. In Hebrew and English, so you have Br, Ish, British, meaning covenant in Hebrew, and man or people of in Welsh-ish. So put the Brit and the ish together and you get the word British, meaning the people of the covenant. In other words, the people Israel of the covenant. Jacob, Israel's fourth son, who was called Judah, had twins called Zara and Pharez. You can find this in Genesis 38, verses 28 through 30. When the twins were due to be born, Zara put his hand out of the womb, and the midwife tied a red cord around his wrist to mark the firstborn, you see, the one with the legitimate birthright and heir. But Zara, of the red hand, still in the womb, pulled his hand back, and his brother Pharez was born first. And so Zara was born second, and his birthright given to Pharez. The name Pharez in Hebrew actually means breach. And you'll never guess what is on the flag of Ireland's area. It's the red hand of this area, because Zara lost his birthright. He went into exile to Iberia, the Hebrews' land. And what do they call the oil fields just off of that island itself? Hibernia. And he built Zaragoza, which means stronghold of Zara. Later on, the Israelites' traditional enemy, Babylon, and then Rome, the new Babylon, invaded Iberia, Spain, and drove the Zaraites of the Red Hand to the north of Spain, to Galicia, to Biscay, and left Iberia, and sailed to Hibernia, the Hebrews' new land, Ireland. Yes, this is where the infamous Red Brigades came from. You can see why. The Red Hand, still in the womb, pulled his hand back, and his brother Pharez was born. In Jerusalem, from Zara's brother Pharez, came the line of David and Solomon, whose symbol is the Star of David, of course. The Star of David, or more accurately, the Seal of Solomon, is on the Ulster flag. And the Ulster flag is the one with the red hand, as, believe it or not, see it yourself by just calling up the Ulster flag pick, and you'll be shocked. There it is, the red hand. So how did the Star of David come to Ireland and find its way to the Ulster flag? Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon overthrew King Zedekiah of Jerusalem from the line of David. That was 588 BC. And Jeremiah, a prophet, took Zedekiah's daughter, called Tephi. Jacob's pillar, also called the Leophale, the stone of destiny I talked about earlier, the stone of Scone, or the coronation stone, or whatever you want to call it, the Ark of the Covenant, were taken from Jerusalem via Tanis in Egypt. By the way, the Raiders of the Lost Ark flick covers this a bit of history, Hollywood style. They were taken through Gibraltar, Galicia, Cornwall, and brought to Ireland for safekeeping, so the story goes. With the help of the prophet Jeremiah, one of the last surviving members of the royalty of the House of David, a prince of Israel, Tephi, came to Ireland by way of Egypt, because you see, she married the High King of Ireland, and they both reigned, passing on the Israelites and Gnostic Druid Essene teachings they brought from ancient Egypt. The legend is she is buried somewhere at Tara, along with the Ark of the Covenant. According to the legend, its recovery from Tephi's tomb on the hill of the Tara will be permanent peace when it happens to Ulster and Ireland. In In the book, Scotland's Past Links with Ancient Egypt, all right, the author Barry Dunford says that Tephi was actually an Egyptian princess. Most likely she was one and the same, both princess of Israel and Egypt, as the Israelites, the Hyksos, ruled in Egypt as well, remember, for a couple of 100 years. That's the tribe of Cain. That's when they got their hooks in Ireland, then to England. It's said that Tephi, the queen of Israel and Gibraltar, landed at Howth in 583 BC, traveled to Tara, where she met Enoch Hyde, the reigning king, the High King of Ireland, in 583, that same year. Enoch Hyde was from the bloodline of Judah Zara of the Red Hand, and Tephi was of the line of David. So when they married, they sealed the breach. It cost hundreds of years before, when Judah's twin sons were born. Check out the Ulster flag. It's your proof. The Red Hand, prominently displayed right in the middle with their marriage union. You now have the Red Hand, mounted on the Star of David under the single crown, symbolizing the union of the two royal lines, which sprang from Judah on the flag of Ulster. It's the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio AM 640. Oh, I knew this would happen. It's Spaceman, Talk Radio AM 648 VFS. Emails to space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Here's what I thought would happen. Let me call him MC. Writes, hey, Space. Been listening all night. Not my first time writing into you, but normally I am a passive listener. But you caught my attention tonight with the Houston and L.A. comments in reference to Tim. I never connected it. It makes so much sense. And the Houston Astros are winning 4-0. And here's the part I thought I knew would be coming. Is there anything I should look for in tomorrow's football games? I'm a degenerate gambler and would love any insight. Thanks. Now, I want to put a disclaimer out immediately right now, and I've done it before, and it's called this. This show is only a view from space. That's all it is. Please do not invest or divest yourself in the stock market when you listen to this show, or take my word for sporting events. Thanks. I just don't want that responsibility. But I do want to speak my mind. And I do want to level with you on what I think is going to happen. But please don't base decisions on the show. I would hate to cause people pain, whether it's emotionally or financially, because of something I said on the radio. So that's understood. So in the book, Scotland's Past Links with Ancient Egypt, the author Barry Dunford says that Tephi was actually an Egyptian princess. Most likely she was one and the same, both princess of Israel and Egypt. As I said, the Israelites, the Hyksos, the Canaanite tribe, actually ruled Egypt as well for a couple of 100 years. And that's when the information was passed on from the Phoenicians after Atlantis to the Egyptian pharaohs, then to King Solomon. It said that Tephi, the queen of Israel and Gibraltar, landed at Howth, 583 BC, travels to Tara, where she marries Enoch Hyde, the High King of Ireland, that same year. Eochaid, of course, from the bloodline of Judah Zara of the Red Hand, and Tephi was from the line of David. So they, well, sealed the breach caused hundreds of years before, when Judah's twin sons were born. So now you see that red hand on the Ulster flag. You see that Ulstermen are not Gentiles, but are in fact Israelites. The true Israelite, descending from Judah, who was Jacob, Israel's fourth son. Even more proof of their identity. The word British is not English, but Hebrew, in fact, in origin. In origin, it means the people of the covenant, as I explained earlier. Or, in other words, the people of Israel, and the Union Jack is called the Union Jack because it is the flag of the Union of Jacob. The British Israeli people of the covenant that is buried inside the Ark of the Covenant on the hill of Tara in County Meath, where the Leofale was, where all of the high kings of Ireland were crowned. This is one of those archaeological digs that I mention occasionally on AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640 that will actually prove, they will dig something up that will actually prove all religions are wrong and will prove that the lies of the Illuminati are actually true. Remember the most quoted line in the movie The Da Vinci Code? A secret so powerful that if revealed, it threatened to devastate the very foundation of Christianity. So in the flick promotion of the Da Vinci Code, Sir Ian McClellan utters the line, the original source in the novel and the book, page 247 of the special illustrated edition, by the way. Now, I mentioned the page number because it breaks down to a hidden 13. And it has TV saying, a secret so powerful that, if revealed, it threatened to devastate the very foundation of Christianity. Would you find that a little intriguing? At least a little? In the previews and the movie, McClellan actually said this, a secret so powerful that, if revealed, would devastate the very foundations of mankind. Again, here's the Illuminati taking in all of humanity into its lie, not just those who believe in Christianity. When the Ark of the Covenant is dug up from Tephi's tomb in the hill of Torah, which I believe it will be, it will bring permanent peace to Ulster and Ireland in fulfillment of his prophecy in the book of Tephi, Queen of Tara and Gibraltar, to his people in Ulster and Ireland. Now, the people of Southern Ireland are not Gentiles either, as they've been wrongly taught by the Vatican, who wanted them to be Catholics. But they're also Israelites, descended from Judah's brother Dan, the fifth of Jacob, Israel's sons, stated in Genesis 30, verse 6, and were known as the Tuatha Danann, the tribe of Dan. And the Tuatha Danann in Ireland were known as fierce fighters and ones who cast magic, black magic spells. The Illuminati believe that when all the people of Israel, or Ireland rather, realize and accept their Israeli roots and reject both the false religions that pass under and abuse Christ's name and true teachings and learn to keep the covenant they all swore at Sinai to keep forever, how can there be anything but peace? The seventh millennium. That refers roughly to the millennium we're in now, starting in around 2001, or some other milestone date. It refers to the beginning, anyway, of the human urbanization and writing and recording of history, which is variously dated as having been over 6,000, but maybe under 6,500 years ago. It's a deliberate attempt to avoid cultural bias and long-term dates. That's what it's all about. But interestingly, the seventh millennium, generally accepted to Christians who accept a very short history of the world, whose creation would be in 4004 BC by some estimates. Some suspect the term for this reason. Others consider it a happy coincidence of written records and the biblical record that reduces the least rational argument and presumably attracts those who believe in creationism. For them, it would emphasize common roots in Adam, Eve, and Noah, rather than the overt cultural and religious distinctions that came up later. The time frame may have been coined specifically to focus on human common origins. So the use of the 7th millennium is most common among secular futurists and those who consider themselves to be world citizens. You know, the New Ager, the ones that want the world to be globalized. These people have an agenda of technological globalization, then political globalization, then religious globalization. And I've just described the New World Order. As it turns out, with a little bit of hindsight, we can now better understand this prediction, the year 2000 or so, thereabouts, in the 7th month. Sept means 7 in French, by the way. From heaven will come a great king of terror, alarm, warning prophet, Elijah. You see the Old Testament book of Malachi, chapter 4, for that. He will bring back to life the great king of Israel, the Christ from the tribe of Joseph, Ephraim. That's recorded in Genesis 49, verses 10, and then again in 22 through 24, the King James Version of the Bible. Before warning the World Trade Center attack and war, Third World War, Armageddon reigns in God's time, which will be the 7th millennium. It's the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. Coming back with more in a minute. I'm the guy to call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. This is the final segment in tonight's show on A View from Space. So who are the British? The Illuminati plan to follow the King James Version of the Bible to the letter, I believe, to establish the Antichrist in Jerusalem as the king of the world. God made a couple of promises in the Bible, conditional and unconditional. He promised Israel blessings for keeping his law. He promised Jeroboam dynasty for keeping his law. And these were conditional. But God gave no conditions when he told Abraham in the Bible that he would be the father of many nations, and kings would come out of him. Genesis 17, verses 4 through 6. Likewise, when he said that the heir would come out of Sarah, God put no conditions on his word. He spoke it as though it would be fact. This is also the case when God talks about David in 2 Samuel 7, verse 16. David is promised unconditionally that his bloodline would never run out. God also said that David's kingdom and throne wouldn't go on forever. David had no say in the matter. He couldn't do anything to hasten or stop those events from occurring. God didn't give David a chance. He just said that those things would come to pass. The whole passage from verse 10 on doesn't seem to make any sense. When his prophecy of Nathan was given, Israel was at peace with everybody. In fact, David ruled from the Euphrates to the Nile. There was peace, prosperity. The Israelites had finally settled in one place and united as one nation under God and David. Well then, how can Nathan come and say that God has appointed a place for Israel? He would plant them in that place from which they'd move no more and be free from their old enemies. Weren't they in their own place? Weren't they at peace with their enemies? And who was thinking of moving? Verses 11 through 13 don't look so unusual. They portray David's soon-to-come family history. David will be made an house dynasty. He will die a natural death. Solomon is to be king. Solomon will build the temple, and his follow-up is easily disconnected from David. It says his, Solomon's, throne shall be established forever, but the first and last parts are very hard to accept. Well, the part about David's bloodline, his house might be okay, but David had a lot of kids, and they all lived 3,000 years ago. So there are probably some people around who come from David's bloodline, but can anyone believe that the last part is true? Does David's throne exist today? Today is part of forever, isn't it? Let's go one step further in establishing the impossibility of this promise. We have to tie these two parts together. Psalms, Jeremiah, and 1 Kings all say that the house and the throne go together. 1 Kings 2:4. Shall not fail thee a man on the throne of Israel. And did you notice how that statement adds a whole new dimension to the picture? Not only must there be a direct bloodline descendant of David ruling, he or she must be ruling over some Israelites. It is possible that in today's modern world, we can fulfill these conditions. So, the only conclusion that can be drawn from these promises is that somewhere in the world, this minute, there's a bloodline descendant of King David ruling over the descendants of the Israelites. How did the God of the Bible work out this mission? Genesis 49 is a crossroads to the Bible, yet most people don't understand the implications of Jacob's actions in passing out the blessings and birthright before he dies. Jacob gives Joseph and therefore his boys Ephraim and Manasseh all the good stuff, virtually the whole birthright. Jacob only keeps back the right to be king of the family and making its governing laws. This means that although Joseph and his family will be the rich nobility of Israel, someone from Judah, a Jew, will be king. When Joseph dies, the tribe of Ephraim will be the preeminent tribe of the nation, but will accede to Judah in being king. As soon as Joseph dies in Egypt, some of the tribe of Judah will take the rulership under Pharaoh. This person will be from the Zara family of Judah. He was firstborn. 200 years after the succession of Judah from the nation Israel, Assyria conquers Samaria and deports the 10 tribes, millions of them, to northern Mesopotamia. Most of them migrate to northwest Europe and British Isles over the next 17 centuries, but we still have a Judite king in Jerusalem named Zedekiah. Oops! Here comes Nebuchadnezzar. He conquers Judah, kills Zedekiah's sons, and carries out Zedekiah and 95% of the people to Babylon. The line is cut. What about David's promise now? No problem. The Zara line is ruling all across the northern Mediterranean. Yeah, by this time they got colonies in Spain, Ireland, Britain, I just told you about. But the throne of David is not in those places. It is in Jerusalem, and the male bloodline has been cut, but not the female. God allowed the daughters to inherit when no male heirs were available, so Jeremiah takes the king's 2 daughters and leaves for Ireland. He drops off 1 daughter in Spain and then marries the Pharez Judah daughter to Zedekiah of the Zara Judah High King of Ireland. Zara back on top, throne preserved. I've researched and found out that Queen Victoria actually spent £1 million establishing her genealogy. There is a wonderful genealogy chart produced by R.H. Milner, as a matter of fact, which lists all the kings to descend out of Judah. And let me show you the list of royal lines included on this chart. Troy, Sacabrians, Franks, Ancient British, Byzantine, Tudor, Anglo-Saxons, Norse, Normans, Guelph, Vetten, Skjold. Vetten, by the way, was Queen Mom. Irish, Scottish, and Hungarian. I can recall one place in Spain that is named after a biblical family, however not one of the tribes. This is Zaragoza, which comes from Zara, Judah's firstborn. It was Zara's family that ruled over 100 years in Egypt after Joseph's death and before the Egyptians revolted against the Hyksos, the Canaanites, foreign rulers. At that time, the nobility, the Zarites, fled across the Mediterranean Sea to already established cities that had been found by their own family. Troy, Athens, Miletus, and more. Diodorus talks about the two exoduses out of Egypt, one by sea, one under Moses. These Zaraites then migrate west, arrive in Spain and Ireland. And one famous Trojan Zarite named Brutus landed in Britain in 1103 BC and founded New Troy, later to be renamed Londinium, then changed again to London. This is the Zara stream of the Judah line that makes sense out of Ezekiel's prophecy. The high tree is the Phares line. The low tree is the Zara line. Him that is high is Phares. Him that is low is Zara. It was the Phares line that came out of Egypt. As the rulers of the Judaic line, Jacob gave Judah the scepter and lawmaking. With the Zarites gone to the northern Mediterranean, then the Pharesites took their rightful place as rulers. One's coming that will claim to be of this lineage, who will become the Antichrist and rebuild Solomon's temple because of the knowledge passed on from the Atlanteans. Spin a View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. Coast to Coast is next. And I'm Space and I'm out.